On July 19th, 1977, the world teacher, the Christ Maitreya, head of the spiritual hierarchy, emerged from his ancient retreat and is now in the modern world. With his disciples, the masters of the wisdom, he will inaugurate the new age of synthesis and brotherhood.
Good morning and welcome to our World Teacher program on Wellington's Access Radio 106.1 FM, presented by Teresa and David on behalf of Share International New Zealand.
Today's program features a commentary on the world's religions, extracted from an interview with Karen Armstrong by Andrea Bistrich in the September 2007 edition of Share International magazine.
Karen Armstrong, the British theologian and author of numerous books on the great religions, has advanced the theory that fundamentalist religion is a response to and product of modern culture. A Catholic nun for 7 years, she left her order while studying at Oxford University.
She is one of the 18 leading group members of the Alliance of Civilizations, an initiative of the former UN General Secretary Kofi Annan, with the purpose of fighting extremism and furthering dialogue between the Western and Islamic worlds.
Karen begins by saying that the divisions in our world are not the result of religion or culture, but are politically based. There is an imbalance of power in the world, and the powerless are beginning to challenge the hegemony of the great powers, declaring their independence of them and using religious language to do so.
A lot of what we call fundamentalism can often be seen as a religious form of nationalism, an assertion of identity. The old 19th century European nationalist ideal has become tarnished and has always been foreign to the Middle East. In the Muslim world, people are redefining themselves according to their religion in an attempt to return to their roots after the great colonialist disruption.
The idea that Islam imposed itself by the sword is a Western fiction, fabricated during the time of the Crusades when, in fact, it was the Western Christians who were fighting brutal holy wars against Islam. The Quran forbids aggressive warfare and permits war only in self-defense.
The moment the enemy sues for peace, the Quran insists that Muslims must lay down their arms and accept whatever terms are offered, even if they are disadvantageous. Later, Muslim law forbade Muslims to attack a country where Muslims were permitted to practice their faith freely. The killing of civilians was prohibited, as were the destruction of property and the use of fire in warfare.
To kill a single human being violates the principles of every single religion, including Islam. Terrorism is an unreligious act. Muslims have repeatedly disowned the terrorists, but this is rarely reported in the Western media. Terror is a political act which may use or abuse the language of religion. An important survey showed that every single suicide bombing since the 1980s was politically rather than religiously motivated. The main grievance was the occupation by the West and its allies of Muslim lands.
There is great common ground between the ideals of Islam and the modern Western ideal, and many Muslims have long realized this. At the beginning of the 20th century, almost every single Muslim intellectual was in love with the West and wanted their countries to look just like Britain and France. Some even said that the West was more Islamic than the unmodernized Muslim countries, because in their modern economics they were able to come closer to the essential teaching of the Quran, which preaches the importance of social justice and equity. At this time, Muslims saw the modern democratic West as congenial.
In 1906, Muslim clerics campaigned alongside secularist intellectuals in Iran for representational government and the constitutional rule. When they achieved their goal, the Grand Ayatollah said that the new constitution was the next best thing to the coming of the Shiite Messiah, because it would limit the tyranny of the Shah, and that was a project worthy of every Muslim. Unfortunately, the British then discovered oil in Iran and never let the new parliament function freely.
As Muslim intellectuals made clear, Islam is quite compatible with democracy, but unfortunately, democracy has acquired a bad name in many Muslim countries. Democracy cannot be imposed by armies and tanks. The West says, "We believe in freedom and democracy, but you have to be ruled by dictators like the Shahs or Saddam Hussein." There are double standards. When I was in Pakistan recently and quoted Mr. Bush saying, "They hate our freedom," the whole audience roared with laughter.
In the Middle East, the problem of oil has made some of these countries the target of Western greed. In the West, in order to preserve our strategic position and cheap oil supply, we have often supported rulers such as the Shahs of Iran, the Saudis, and initially Saddam Hussein, who have established dictatorial regimes which suppressed any normal opposition. The only place where people felt free to express their distress has been the mosque.
For many Muslims, the plight of the Palestinians represents everything that is wrong with the modern world. The fact that in 1948, 750,000 Palestinians could lose their homes with the apparent approval of the world symbolizes the impotence of Islam in the modern world vis-à-vis the West.
Islam was always a religion of success, going from one triumph to another, but Muslims have been able to make no headway against the secular West, and the plight of the Palestinians epitomizes this impotence. It is also important to note that Hamas, for example, is very different from a movement like Al-Qaeda, which has global ambitions. Hamas is a resistance movement. It does not attack Americans or British, but concentrates on attacking the occupying power. It is yet another instance of fundamentalism as a religious form of nationalism.
The Arab-Israeli conflict has also become pivotal to Christian fundamentalists in the United States. The Christian right believes that unless the Jews are in their land fulfilling the ancient prophecies, Christ cannot return in glory in the second coming. So they are passionate Zionists, but this ideology is also anti-Semitic, because in the last days they believe that the Antichrist will massacre the Jews in the Holy Land if they do not accept baptism.
Western people have a responsibility for everybody who is suffering in the world. We are among the richest and most powerful countries, and cannot morally or religiously stand by and witness poverty, dispossession or injustice, whether it's happening in Palestine, Kashmir, Chechnya or Africa. But Western people have a particular responsibility for the Arab-Israeli situation. In the Balfour Declaration in 1917, Britain approved of a Jewish homeland in Palestine and ignored the aspirations and plight of the native Palestinians.
And today the United States supports Israel economically and politically, and also tends to ignore the plight of the Palestinians. This is dangerous, because the Palestinians are not going to go away, and unless a solution is found that promises security to the Israelis and gives political independence and security to the dispossessed Palestinians, there is no hope for world peace.
Karen Armstrong goes on to briefly explain the common ground of the world religions. She says, the three religions of Abraham, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, can and should be viewed as one religious tradition that went in three different directions. None is superior to any of the others. Each has its own particular genius, each its own particular flaws. Jews, Christians and Muslims worship the same God and share the same moral values.
In the book A History of God, I tried to show that throughout their history, Jews, Christians and Muslims have asked the same kind of questions about God and have come up with remarkably similar solutions, so that there are Jewish and Muslim versions of the Incarnation, for example, and very similar notions of prophecy.
Jews, however, have always found it difficult to accept the latter faiths of Christianity and Islam. Christianity has always had an uneasy relationship with Judaism, the parent faith, and has seen Islam as a blasphemous imitation of revelation. The Quran, however, has a positive view of both Judaism and Christianity, and constantly asserts that Muhammad did not come to cancel out the faiths of the people of the book.
You cannot be a Muslim unless you also revere the prophets, Abraham, David, Noah, Moses and Jesus, whom the Muslims regard as a prophet, as in fact do many of the New Testament writers. Luke's Gospel calls Jesus a prophet from start to finish. The idea that Jesus was divine was a later development, often misunderstood by Christians.
Unfortunately, however, religious people like to see themselves as having a monopoly of truth. They see that they alone are the one true faith. But this is egotism and has nothing to do with true religion, which is about the abandonment of the ego. The world religions all insist that the one single test of any type of faith is that it must show practical compassion. They have nearly all developed a version of the golden rule: do not do to others what you would not have done to you.
This demands that we look into our own hearts, discover what it is that gives us pain, and then refuse under any circumstances to inflict that pain on anybody else. Compassion demands that we feel with the other, that we dethrone ourselves from the centre of our world and put another there. This is the bedrock message of the Quran and the New Testament. I can have faith that moves mountains, says St. Paul, but if I lack charity, it profits me nothing.
Rabbi Hillel, a contemporary of Jesus, defined the golden rule as the essence of Judaism. Everything else, he said, was commentary. We have exactly the same teaching in Confucianism, Taoism, Hinduism and Buddhism. I've tried to show this in one of my most recent books, The Great Transformation.
The traditions all insist that it is not enough simply to show compassion to your own group. You must have concern for everybody, or as Jewish law puts it, honour the stranger. Jesus said, love your enemies. If you simply love your own kind, this is purely self-interest and a form of group egotism. The traditions also insist that it is the daily, hourly practice of compassion, not the adoption of the correct beliefs, that will bring us into the presence of what is called God, Nirvana, Brahman or the Deo. Religion is thus inseparable from altruism.
So why aren't the religious people compassionate? What does that say about them? Compassion is not a popular virtue. Many religious people prefer to be right rather than compassionate. They don't want to give up their egos. Religion is hard work. Not many people do it well. The failure of religious people to be compassionate doesn't tell us something about religion, but about human nature. Religion is a method. You have to put it into practice to discover its truth. Not many people do, unfortunately. That concludes the comments by Karen Armstrong, the British theologian and author of numerous books on the great religions.
You're listening to the World Teacher Programme on Wellington's Access Radio 106.1 FM. The World Teacher Maitreya states that there is really no contradiction between the different religions. Religions have been trapped through words and slogans into vying with each other. This competition will disappear and the essence will remain. Hindus, Christians, Muslims, Jews and Buddhists will all experience oneness. Those who cling to old forms will create division after division, but these forms will eventually disappear. This process is inevitable. Churches, mosques and temples will become meeting places as well as centres where those in need can be helped by others.
That quote is found in Benjamin Krem's book, Maitreya's Teachings, The Laws of Life. Coming up now is an extract from Maitreya's message number 32. These messages were given during Benjamin Krem's public lectures in London via a process of mental overshadowing or spiritual telepathy, which is not related to mediumship or channeling.
My appearance among men is nigh. Soon, for yourselves, you will know that I am with you. Your brothers already know me and trust me, and look to me as leader. In this fashion shall I speak for them and to the world, placing before mankind the choices. Many hear me even now. Listen to my words and ponder, for I tell them what in their heart they know. I tell them that justice is a law of God. I tell them that love is the way to the source. I show them that without love and justice, mankind will perish. My brothers love me for these truths, for they recognize them to stand behind all life. Thus shall I speak, and thus shall you know that I am among you. Make haste to follow me, to create the new time, the glorious future which shines ahead for mankind. Let me speak to you simply, my friends. Let me trace for you the plan of God for that future. Let me show you the way to manifest that God which you are, and so complete that plan. Perhaps you are surprised by the fact of my early return, but men and women weep, children die, and others laugh in blind forgetfulness. My coming is not by chance, but by law and love. That law and that love has brought me here. When you see me, you will see a friend and brother, and I shall know my coming has not been in vain.
This next article is from Benjamin Creme's Master and is sourced from Share International magazine, September 2007. It's called Man's Divinity and begins: deep in the consciousness of all men is the awareness of the divine. With some it is near at the surface of the mind, in others it lies relatively unknown and undiscovered until some major event or stimulus awakens it from sleep. Thus some affirm readily the existence of the divine, while many reject, often heatedly, the reality of all that cannot be known, measured and understood by their five senses.
Today many are sensing more and more the presence of Maitreya, whose energies penetrate all the planes of consciousness. They may not know the name or even of his existence, but responding to his energy are aware of a new and spiritual climate in the world. They find it difficult to explain, but know with growing certainty that they live in the aura of the divine and that all will be well.
They know too that they are not alone, that their prayers are being answered, and that something wonderful and sacred is happening on planet Earth. They sense that the stressful and dangerous conditions of today are nearing their end, that beyond the fear and failures of our time is a new and better world to be fashioned, and that it will be so fashioned.
Meanwhile, Maitreya prepares to engage with all that hinders man's progress and well-being, with all that prevents the expression of his divinity, and also with man's own fear and frailty. He will show that man has come from the highest source and is equipped with all the potential of gods, that, freed from the fear which holds him in thrall, man can build a civilization worthy of his divinity and creative genius.
He will show that fear and lack of trust alone condemn men to the present dangerous conditions which threaten their existence, that the simple act of sharing will bring justice and peace to their troubled world, that men must recognize themselves as one group, sons of the one Father. Thus will he speak, thus will he call on men to change.
How will men respond? How will they find Maitreya's analysis of their position and problems? Maitreya is not alone in urging change and reform in the world. Many wise men and women are responding to his thoughts and energy and propound widely his ideas. Slowly but surely these ideas are taking root and educating large masses of hitherto uninterested and uncommitted people. Thus is Maitreya's way being prepared.
Even so, how can Maitreya touch the hearts of the millions needed to change direction? The answer lies in the potency of his energies. Never before has a teacher of such power stood before the world. With each word uttered, his beneficent force flows from heart to heart. Useless and unnecessary is argument and debate. His truth calls forth the truth in the heart of the listener, and in the crucible of their shared divinity is recognized as truth itself.
That concludes the Master's article, and that's our programme for today. If you have any questions or would like to know more about the world teacher Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, please call us on 06 3646 101 or visit the website share-international.org.
To inquire about Share International magazine subscriptions, books by Benjamin Creme, or our monthly free of charge newsletter, the number is 04234 1133, or write to P.O. Box 9576 Wellington.
Thank you for listening to us on Wellington's Access Radio 106.1 FM, and please tune in to our next World Teacher programme on Saturday the 1st of October at the usual time of 10 a.m.
You can listen again to this programme and previous ones by visiting our website at share-international-nz.info and click on the Radio tab.